It's one of those fun aspects where you're designing sets that are very true, so that if George was shooting both of these films back to back, it would look the same. And same for the Gareth. I mean, the sets cut right together. And I think the only difference you're going to really see is that in the beginning, Gareth is going to have a slight different filmic style. But towards the end of it, he will slowly segue to be a film that looks very much like Episode 4. And that's going to be the magic, is that, when these two films, you can edit right together, and you should watch it together as a 4 hours experience.
Gareth turned it into an exercise, didn't he? For
Yes.
them, that the concept artists could only spend a minute and a half maximum drawing out a shape, and then leave it, then move on to the next, then move on to the next. Turned it into competition. Yeah.
And
Ryan won.
Yes, no, and it holds true, because if you look at all the Star Wars design, the best designs in there are simple shapes. X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Star Destroyer. I mean, they're the simplest shapes that anybody can draw.
When I first saw Star Wars, I was 6, and it blew my little mind then. And you can definitely say it changed my life, even though I was only 6. It's something that kind of filled my brain and influenced everything I did after that, pretty much. So you do remember it differently, and we've had to go back and look at things over and over again, and you're like, oh well, that when you really look at it hard, you do see the gaffer tape stuck on the stormtroopers, and you see certain things that aren't in your memory. So it was nice to be able to live in that, to work in that world, as it were, to live in that world, and to be able to do it how we remembered it, and to just do some things just that little bit better, so that, because you couldn't do it how it was done then, it wouldn't survive the HD treatment. So it's just like tweaking things, like on the stormtroopers, where there were stickers on certain decals on certain things. We put it all in the computer, and we made them little 3-dimensional proper vents rather than stickers and stuff. So it's just little things like that. If you look at it, you wouldn't notice the difference. But when you go in tight on it, you can see it's a more real object. There's a character if you blink you'll miss it, but there's a character on the Death Star in the original film, in A New Hope, who's sitting alongside Tarkin, and he's got a really kind of fine moustache and slick back hair, and I think, according to the expanded universe, his name is Yularen or something, and he's got this great white tunic on, and we thought that would be a great look, for the villain of this piece.
And they're interesting because there is a combination between the practical and the digital, that we're using digital technology to remove things, not necessarily replace them, but to remove them. So it allowed us to think about characters a little bit more outside of the box, and to say, okay, it doesn't matter that we might see that part of someone's head, because this is a great design, and Gareth really wants this to look a certain way, and we'll remove that part digitally, and that's a little further push on. Some are completely practical, and some will require some extra digital work, and I think it'll give them a new flavour. I love that idea, and I think it's an idea that I would hope to explore more and more, which is where the two techniques come together, where you can practically bring a significant amount of a character to screen, but you can push it further than maybe the audience are used to, by having the help of the digital world. I don't think that's been fully explored yet, and I think there's a lot of things that can be done in the future that will make from some extraordinary characters. So we design, initially with the director, we design the creatures or the characters. So we have a little team of people who are concept artists, if you'd call them that, who pen up initial ideas, and there's no strict rules at the beginning. The idea is just to it's a bit like making a dish with lots of ingredients. And so we draw up the droids and the characters, however they might be, whether they're creatures completely or whether they're part human, any of these things. And so we quickly get to a point, hopefully, with the director where he understands, in a sense, the things that we can do practically. Because obviously we always have to be mindful of the fact that we have to bring these to life practically, that we're not going to use them as digital characters. And I think once he understands that, or she understands that, whoever it may be, we begin to get to know their creative mind a little bit as well. So there are certain drawings or certain creatures that they will react to more than others, and that gives us a little bit of a hint of saying, okay, that's the kind of direction that we need to go in. He wants you to be spontaneous. He wants the characters to be spontaneous. He wants to find that moment his way. And that's really intriguing, because instead of coming onto the set with a preconception of what you're doing and over-managing it potentially, the idea is that you come on with a character that has a sense of its own, of who it is. That's all it is. It's like you and I sitting here right now. We are having a conversation and we're being filmed. And it's not rehearsed, we're just talking. And for Gareth, that's what he wanted out of the creatures. He wanted them to be part of the world, to make and they're not necessarily any more important or any different than any other part of his world, and that we would, in a sense, approach it in that way. And so when we perform them and when we're on the set, we're never sure when the camera will find us, we're never sure whether we're front of camera, whether we're in the background, and that is... that has a brilliance to it. When we started with Gareth, which was interesting, was not a physical shape, but more as a kind of what is the body language of K2? So what is he? And you kind of imagine him leaning up against a wall and being kind of a little bit sort of yeah, whatever. And that allowed us then to start to play with what would be the Empire alternative to C-3PO. I mean, C-3PO, is a wonderful, incredible, iconic character, but you wouldn't say he was exactly sprightly on his feet. So, what would the Empire be version of that? Something that you could take into battle with you, something that you could rely on and be supportive in combat. And so, as a piece of military hardware, he became. It sort of drove us towards this character that was obviously tall, very stealth-like, had very long limbs, ability to be able to cover ground very quickly, but also to have a kind of, as I say, an attitude, a sort of a kind of slightly indifferent attitude. Space Monkey, as a character, is played by Nick Kellington, and it's his eyes that we see. It's his performance that's coming through. So when Gareth was working in a very early test, a rehearsal, I think it was amazing because he immediately engaged with this character in a way that made it that much more, I think, real to Gareth. Was that he was actually talking to the character, and he was talking directly to Nick through his eyes. And although he's got this mask on, and the mask is animatronic, there was that absolute relationship.
Well, Gareth has a visual effects background, so he doesn't really need a great deal of education about how and where you need to use visual effects. It's mostly the subject matter itself that dictates the use of visual effects. There are many places where a setting is something that can't be entirely created practically, or it's too big or too expensive, and you need various methods for synthesizing that imagery. Since we're going to be building a great many assets of various kinds, spaceships and other bits of hardware, we wanted to make a digital version of the model kit library so that we could take a similar process and hopefully the aesthetic would be continuous across the films that way. So rather than when somebody's building a spaceship, they're building every little nut and bolt on the ship. The idea was that if we built digital models of a lot of those original kit pieces, the artillery pieces, the tanks, the F1 race car engines. If we built a lot of those same pieces and had digital versions of those, then when the modelers are building, they can be selecting from those pieces, fitting them into the model, and the hope is that we are preserving that same aesthetic. Well, one of the things we're doing with the LED screen is in a couple of cases, we're trying to get shots complete in camera that would otherwise be visual effect shots. So, for example, we have a ship called the Ewing that's coming in to land on Edu, and it's relatively dark, sort of a dark twilight, and it's raining, and there's lightning flashes that are occurring in the sky around them. And our hope is that the graphics that we've prepared to play back on the LED screen, in addition to having some practical effects, some rain hitting the windshield, wind blowing that, and the lightning flashes going on, will allow us to get a number of those angles complete in camera. Trying to make as much of this practical as we can. We had a great many costumed extras, wonderful creature work by Neil Scanlon's crew. So we're really trying to keep as much of that in camera as we can. We definitely see off the top of the set at times. So there'll be the addition of the skyline. There's meant to be a Star Destroyer that is hovering over the city as part of the occupation. So whenever that comes into frame, that'll be us. They're meant to be ATSTs, the two-legged Imperial walkers, are patrolling the city, so we'll see those occasionally in the background. Well, K2SO came from the idea of, in the Star Wars universe, your small group of experts with complementary skills that come together to do an amazing mission can extend to physical diversity. So having one of the members of your team be a droid, that you can use that droid for the things that a human being can't do. In a way, he's kind of the anti-C-3PO. And where C-3PO has got all these remarkable capabilities, he's really only used for comic relief in the original films. But I kept thinking, yeah, but he's potentially a very cool character and very useful on a mission like this, where he can speak 6 million forms of communication. He's able to instantly calculate the odds of success of multiple different logistic possibilities, can imitate any voice, can carry on multiple electronic conversations simultaneously. There are all these things that you could use a droid for that a human being can't do, and that's why you want to have someone with those capabilities as part of your team.
Hey guys, did you know that Pierce Brosnan was contractually forbidden from wearing a full tuxedo in any non-James Bond movie from 1995 to 2002? For this and more movie facts, click on more videos. But if you want something else, click on the playlist.